Welcome to section 3. I started section 3, excuse me, of Money Myths. And we're looking at various myths from the Bible, looking from the Bible to counter various myths we have about money and finances. And appreciate having a chance to step out last week. The rest of the team was here to take us through that, so appreciate that very much. So we're ready to jump in. We'll get you the myth in just a moment, but let me just give you a chance to say hi to everybody. So let me bring everybody in. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Okay. I usually like try to set this up real form-like. So, Lisa, just say something.
Like something fun, something not so fun. Hey, it was a beautiful day today. I hope everyone was able to enjoy it.
Perfect. Adam?
Howdy.
Howdy. I've never heard you make a one-word statement ever in my life. Joe, how's it going?
It is going well, and I'm glad to be here this evening.
Well, very
this
good.
is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to
it. Tonight's myth, let's just get to it. Tonight's myth is, I don't need a plan. Now, this one is one of those myths that probably no one would ever say with their outside voice. No one would say, I don't need a plan. I've got it all figured out. But many of us would say by our actions, we don't need a plan. We just don't ever get around to doing it, or we have a plan that really never becomes a plan, that sort of thing. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Myth number 3, I don't need a plan. And we're going to look at a Bible story from Luke chapter 14 in just a moment. If you have a Bible, you can get that ready. Also, discussion guides are available. You can just go to the church website and get that. And we would appreciate you getting that and following along. So, okay, Adam, I think you have a question for us. Once you get an opening up question, while you're asking that, I'll let you all get a head start on answering. I'm going to step out for just a moment, and I will be right back. So, Adam, I'll kick it over to you.
All right, we'll do. Well, since we are on session 3 talking about money myths this evening, let's ask the question, what has been your experience when you don't have a financial plan? But you don't have to get personal here, but I'm sure that plenty of you all have some stories and we would love to read them and interact with you. I will go last on this one. So I'm going to kick it over to one of you two.
Tell you what, I'll start off here. I don't have a plan. I find that my spending and my financial management is more reactive than proactive. I don't think about where I am as far as how much money I do or don't have. And sometimes as a result of that, I can be a whole lot more susceptible to impulse buying. So I think a plan is very important to me to avoid that.
I like the idea of having a plan. When I was thinking it, I was like a goal. If you don't have a financial goal, then you're just kind of going around in a circle, thinking, well, can I buy this? Well, sure, because you don't really know like where your plan is or how much you have, and kind of living paycheck to paycheck. So you really need a plan.
I would just comment on both of you all of asking the question, what is a financial plan? I have no idea what I'm just playing. Anyways.
Let me introduce you to someone.
I'm just playing. But in all honesty, long time ago, I don't think I necessarily had a financial plan, so to speak. I do think it was kind of like what Lisa was saying. It's just, do I have the money? I don't know. Don't care. This is what I want. This is what I'm going to buy. And so I think having a financial plan is just really good because it balances out, what you really need as opposed to what I want. And not saying that the wants are bad either, but it just kind of sets you up for financial goals as well too, just like Joe was saying. And real quick, before Jesse hops back on, I was reading this today and it made me think, when you set goals, it's not necessarily how much you have, but what you want to do. And John Wesley, back in the mid 1700s, had a goal, and by the end of his life, the dude, this is crazy. The guy was actually making almost $130,000 a year, right? His salary, but he only lived on $28,000 a year. The rest of the money was given to ministries, the poor, and just overall God's kingdom, and that's what he wanted to do with his money. So
Wow.
That's why it's also good to have financial plans so we can set goals of what we want to do with the money.
Sure. Yeah. I actually saw on Facebook.
That's a really good point there. Go ahead, Lisa. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you go right ahead, Joe.
You bring up a really good point that without a plan, we don't really think as much as we need to about what God might want to use our resources for, where we could invest in the kingdom. And without a plan, I don't default to that. I default to things that are more me oriented. So without a plan, I don't really go there. And I really want to do that. I want to honor God with my resources.
Very good. Lisa, you were going to say something. I want to give you a shot there.
Well, I was just going to say, I happened to see on Facebook the other day, it was an overhead shot of an aerial view of like Billy Graham's house compared to a mega pastor's house. That it just, again, have what you want, do what you want, but it just kind of put things in perspective to me. I mean, when I saw it, it kind of took me back a little bit to,
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I was just thinking that without a plan, you're always going to wind up somewhere different than you intend to, just because the plan is what's going to guide you there and lead you there. And so it all comes down to your purposefulness, or the purpose is, I'm going to try to get here. Well, you have to have a plan to get there, and then you got to measure and all those sorts of things. So did someone say the word disaster a bit ago or something? Because without a plan, that's, I've been there, done that. So very good. Well, let's get to the scriptures tonight. We're looking at Luke chapter 14 and verse 28. And I want to give you a little bit of a disclaimer here, okay? The primary purpose of Jesus telling this story is not to tell us a story about financial management. He uses sort of a financial management story to teach us about something else. So we're going to kind of look at the story within the story, but then we are going to come back around to talk at least a little bit about the main point he's making, because it's very, very clear. But verse 28 is where we're going to begin. He says, "For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it? Lest after he has laid the foundation and is not able to finish it, all who see it will begin to mock him, saying, 'This man began to build and was not able to finish.'" So he's got a building project, and he begins before he has done the sufficient planning to know if he has the financial resources to finish it. So so he winds up worse. He would have been better off not to have started the project rather than have a half-built project that everybody mocks and laughs at and so forth. So it's a call to count the cost, to make a calculation, to make a plan in advance. So that's kind of the basic outline. I'll give you a little bit of culture here that'll also help us to understand the story in its context. In an agricultural society, for us, if you plant a garden or you have some shrubs and the deer come out of the neighbor's woods and eat it up, we're not real happy about it, but we're not also going to starve in the winter. We're still going to get our paycheck. In an agricultural society, you got one paycheck a year, and that's when the harvest came in. So you worked all year for one paycheck, one payday. And if something happened to that harvest, critters, the birds come down and eat the grain, or animals come in and eat the plants up, or someone comes and steals it from you, or remember Jesus talked about the sowing of the tares, those weeds. Someone messes with it, does some that messes it up that way. You were going to be in big trouble. So your harvest was everything. So they would build a tower, and actually part of the tower too, you'd pay somebody, or if you had someone in your family, would sit there at nights and basically guard your harvest, because this was it's like getting your money to the bank. You put it in an armored car to keep it safe and so forth. So very, very, very important to do that. So a little bit different than why is there a tower? Why is it important? It was also part of good management. It was a good thing to have. It was a good idea. He just didn't prepare and plan and get it done. So that's kind of the story. That's very good. Okay, I think we got the question. This is going to kind of overlap that, just to kind of get that fleshed out in our mind. First question: how does Jesus use a financial story to challenge the faithfulness of the crowd that followed him? And I probably should back up and read the verse before verse 28, where he says, "And whoever does not bear my cross and come after me cannot be my disciple." So he's saying, you want to follow me, It'll be one of my disciples. Count the cost. Now he tells the story to do that. So go ahead. I'm going to throw that over to you. Any of you online, please try to answer questions along. We will welcome your input.
I'm sorry, I thought you were going to go. Well, as we know, I mean, Jesus used parables that they could understand, and that was happening right there in their world and what was going on with them. And nothing hits home closer than the fact that, you know, if you lose everything, you know, if you, you know, if your money's gone and you didn't plan, it cost you something if you didn't put some thought into it.
I think too, he wanted to reiterate that there's a cost to discipleship. You know, it's not free. There is a cost, but it's well worth the investment. And this man, you know, he failed to think about that. He failed to plan to figure out exactly how much this was going to cost him. And it was just poor planning. And I want to go back to what Jess said, the idea of intentional, purposeful living. You know, so many people, they spend more time planning their vacation than they do the rest of their lives. And I think that's really important, that we need to work on our life and think about where we want to be when we're ready to pass on. I think my generation has been really guilty of that. There's so many people in my generation that have not planned adequately for retirement, and they're going to struggle. And you know, it's an important thing to be able to accomplish that. We need to figure out what the cost is.
Very well said. Thank you, Lisa.
And that word cost is just to calculate. I mean, and like Jesse was saying, it's a story within a story. So we're looking at, you know, Jesus requires 4 different types of cost, and then, you know, when you come into verse 28, it's actually the third one is when he's talking about, I want you to think about this, because in all honesty, salvation is free, but yet it's going to cost you everything. But just like Joe said, it is well worth it. Like, not only do you recognize who I am and the presence that you're going and where you're going, but there's blessings and there's rewards and so forth. But it's not just like, sure, let me say this or whatever else. It's literally, you want to calculate of what you're giving up, but what you're giving up for, in essence. And Jesus is giving life beyond just quote, quote, these costly measures. But just like what you were saying, Pastor, people would have understood this when he was talking about cost, because of the agriculture and so forth of that aspect.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Well, very good. Thank you for that. I think I've already said all I've got to the beginning, but we want to start thinking about how this challenge to count the cost and the cost of the failure of counting the cost, how we can now appropriate this and help us with this. Because remember, our myth tonight is, I don't need a plan. We just somehow think it's all going to work out, that we don't need to plan, we don't need to think about it. So let's see if we can just sort of now pivot to thinking about how this fits in the financial world, because he does use this illustration from an economic standpoint to illustrate the thoughtfulness here. So next question is a question for discussion. And this is just challenging for all of us, okay? Do you make, and for those of you watching, do you make it a habit to count the cost ahead of time, or do you plunge right into planning mode without considering what the task may cost you? Explain. And maybe we just talk about maybe even people in general. What do you think where does the majority land in this particular spectrum, if you want to say it that way?
All right, I have a question real quick. Are we skipping to question 2, or are you going to question 1?
Oh, I'm sorry. I did them out of order. Okay. Take that question back off. Okay. Thank you, Adam.
I'm just asking.
I'm just going to keep clicking.
Didn't you do that very politely? Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. The next question really is, how would the words of Luke 14, 28-30 apply to your personal life and or professional experience? Okay. Yes, thank you. I don't want to miss that question. I'm going to get my study guide right here front and center, so I don't miss that again.
I'll go on this one. I think for just keeping it from a financial perspective, personally, when I think about calculating the cost, it's not giving up on your goals even when life gets hard. So if my goal, let's say, is to put aside X amount of dollars to pay off a car, pay off debt, get a car, get a house, whatever it may be, I think there's things that happen in life that we get boggled down. It's just like, I don't even know why I'm doing this anymore. Like, there's no point in me putting aside money. And so it's evaluating that to keep going to reach that financial goal. That's me personally.
Good.
Well, achieving success at the end of the journey actually starts at the beginning of the journey. You actually have to start with the end in mind is, kind of like what I kind of hear around our household quite a bit. You have to start with the end in mind.
Yeah. What's the end game? Yeah. Very true.
I like that.
I think that a lot of people tend to act in response to their emotions and their feelings more than they do in relation to their plans. And it may be because they've never taken the time to establish their plans. But I think that our society has, we kind of respond to our emotions, and we use that as the basis for a decision. And the problem with that is your feelings change quickly. And that's a really poor platform to make your decisions from.
Yeah, very true. I thought in terms, one of the fruit of the spirit is self-control, and proper planning, budgeting, however you want to describe it, is something that should help us have some self-control, some self-discipline. Okay, is this the right time to buy this? Is this the right amount to spend? How's this going to help me? Just asking the questions, am I putting my money in something that's going to hold its value, appreciate, help me, accomplish some end? Or is it something that's going to go, next year it's ready to be put out in the garage sale, and it's cluttering up our attics, our basements, our storage buildings, and all the rest. And so it's that way of bringing some control in. It's that the planning process is part of what catches you. That's the reason we as a church have a budget. All of us, that are part of this team, we are constrained by our budget. It keeps us on target. And we do a budget next year. If we got to make changes, then that's put into place. The congregation approves it and so forth. So it's a control mechanism, self-discipline mechanism, also a measuring mechanism as well. But we can get into that later as well. Okay, Adam, did we cover that question to your satisfaction? No,
hey, we'd like to hear from you guys as well too, man. So those of you guys are watching, go ahead and comment away. Again, we would like to read those and interact with you.
Yeah, because Lisa's bringing up the questions we're asking. So if you don't have the study guide, they're going to be right here on the screen. Screen for you. Okay. Perfect. Now, I think I've heard this question before. Do you make it a habit to count the cost ahead of time, or do you plunge right into, not considering what it may cost? So are you face first into the fray, or are you like, let's stop and do that?
Okay, well, I'm more of a plunge right in. But I think how the Lord brings you with your partner. This is a cost counter. And so his job is now to count the cost of what I'm plunging into. So he is helping me to do better. I mean, actually, we are years down the road now, so I would say I'm better. Of course, if he's listening or watching, it's hard to tell what's going to come up on the comments, but I believe I'm better.
It is true, because it is true. Opposites attract, and you see this in couples all the time. But the couples that I'm trying to get ready as best you can for marriage, one of the things we cover is I try to help them determine who's the saver, who's the spender. And typically, there's one in each category. And my encouragement is use that to balance each other out. Okay, you don't want to be a tightwad. At the same time, you don't want to just spend yourself into the poorhouse. So you're figuring that out. That also helps with planning. Who's the better planner? Who should be in charge of the finances and the checkbook and the budget and all that sort of thing as well?
Now, if we're planning vacation, I'm the better planner, and I would spend way more time. I think Joe brought that up, spending time planning the vacation. But Chris is planning the rest of our life.
Yeah. But he probably had something to say about even the vacation budget.
He did and does.
Very good.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it depends, Pastor, what you were saying, especially like if I'm talking with couples and so forth about to get married. There's a book that I like to use, and I love how it's very practical. It actually gives kind of a homework assignment of this long list of items of what a husband would pay for these items and what the female would pay for these items, and they bring it back, and it's kind of interesting to see if they both kind of match up, or it's just like, I would never spend that much on XYZ, or no, I would, you know what I'm saying? And it's kind of, you kind of see the gist from practical sense of, okay, here's the spender and here's definitely the saver and so forth. But I think to this question, I think it depends on the situation. And look, I'll be completely transparent. You know, my wife texted me today, was just like, hey, what'd you spend $57 on today just out of nowhere? All right, so it probably went more towards my emotional, but you know, hey, for me, I've been trying, because we've been this whole pandemic and things are crazy, and I'm not ready to go back to the Y yet. Yeah, I download an at-home type of app for a specific workout that's geared towards me. And so, did I get shocked into it? Did the advertisement work? It sure did, because I watched the guy for like 12 minutes. I'm like, Dad, I want that. So I purchased it. So I guess it depends. I guess it depends on, stuff like that, or I don't know, just on the whim going out and buying a car. Like for me, that would take some planning and preparation. I think it really just depends on what you are purchasing.
Yeah.
So.
I think Adam brings up a good point. Sometimes we, especially like with COVID and everything, we tend to reward ourselves sometimes with financial purchases. We think that, man, I've been dealing with this for months and I deserve such and such. And we react out of our emotion, and that's hard to. I think all of us do that to some degree, but it's a hard thing to rein in and to have the self-discipline the pastor talked
about. Yeah. And part of that, and I can go on either way of this, the plunge in or, over counting the cost. It really, as Adam said, it's sort of situational. But part of that counting the cost, I think is okay, what is this ultimately going to cost me? I know this goes way back in the early days of Focus on the Family, but James Dobson told a story about he bought a swing set for his kids. Okay, and of course he goes to the store and this is the one I want. Of course, you don't get the one that's on display at the store, you get the one that's unassembled. Mm-hmm. He talked about how it took him forever to build this thing, and then he said he read the instructions, and the instructions said you need to check all of the connections and all the bolts because you don't want them to loosen up and it fall and kill somebody. So at least once a month you had to do that. At least once a month you had to lubricate all the moving parts. And he said, I just bought me something that's going to mean, twice a month forever I'm going to have to be maintaining this thing, and it probably would work for kids, but you know what I'm talking about. And the other thing is this going to put me in an indebtedness situation? I mean, it is so easy for us to spend money we don't have. Get it now, pay later. Probably the best, and I don't even know who told me this, where I heard this, but it's just so simple. The best advice is the best simple one sentence financial advice is simply this: spend less than you make. If we all just kind of adhered to that as best we could, and I'm not going to say that every debt's bad. You can't, take out a loan or, mortgage or whatever. I mean, you got to figure that thing out. But there's a general principle. You got to be careful about spending money you don't have, or spending more than you make. That sounds so simple, but how many people, have plastic will travel, that sort of thing. So, that sort of thing. Okay. Anything else you want to say on this question we got in front of us here? Okay, I want to go back and reread the passage one more time because I want to make sure we get tied back into our text. I know we have some of our people that are watching online have joined us perhaps a little bit late. But it's Luke chapter 14:28. Jesus speaking, for which of you intending to build a tower does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it? Lest after he's laid the foundation, not able to finish it all, in the bottom saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. And we're using that phrase, that the concept of counting the cost, to think about this money myth that I don't need a plan. I can wing it. Everything will be fine. Okay. Now we want to get a little more practical tonight. We're going to just talk our way through 5 ways to use wisdom in money management. Okay, and this is just sort of practical wisdom and that sort of thing. And Adam, would you look up Matthew 6:33 there for us? Okay. But the first one is honor the Lord first. Honor the Lord first. And I'm going to, looks like he's about zeroed in on it there. You want to read that for us, Adam?
Yep.
Matthew 6:33. Jesus
says, but seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be provided for you.
Yeah. And in that context, the things that will be provided for you, added to you, are things that we need: bodily, physical, tangible stuff. And the things we worry about, clothing and food and all that sort of thing. And so let's talk about what does it mean, honor the Lord first. I'll let any of you chime in here.
If I can.
Go ahead, Adam.
No, go Joe, because I'm gonna draw something and I'm gonna show it. Go ahead.
All right. So, I mean, let's think first in terms of tithes and offerings. You know, that means we need to plan for our giving, and we need our first fruits with the best that we have. And maybe later, even after other expenses, we may be able to offer more. You know, if we have a month maybe where expenses are a little lower than normal, maybe we can do something special, give missionary, support someone, that kind of thing. But it's obviously the first thing is to honor him with our resources and tithes and offerings.
Yes. It ties right back into the verse that Adam just read us. Adam, you got your artwork done?
Yeah, I don't know. This one might be hard. Oh gosh. Can y'all see that?
I see a line with little circles on the end.
Okay. So, I point people a lot of times to this passage because, in all honesty, at very first, that's what he's saying. He says, but seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. All right, let's stop right there. So first and foremost, for us to honor God, we have to have a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. That's first and foremost. That's priority. When we have that as top priority, then everything else.
Very
so
good.
we got to have this first, and then everything else comes into play. And I mean, we don't want to get into that tonight, but that's when people are like, want to know the specifics. Should I get with this person? Should I get with this person? Should I save for this? How much should I spend for this? Blah, 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 blah. But I think ultimately it comes back to, first and foremost, do you have a relationship with the Lord? And if you do, then rather than asking all these questions first, let's spend some time with him. Let's seeking him out. Let's be in prayer. Should I spend X amount of money on this? Should I go for a used car as opposed to this new car? Should I just all those different facets needs to start with the Lord first. And then I really, truly believe, based upon his word, everything just kind of comes into picture. Here it is.
Very good. Very good. Lisa?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, kind of like it follows with Adam and Joe's. When Chris and I first got married, or even when we were going to get married and we started working on a budget, it shocked me that the first thing Chris wrote down was our tithe. Because, I mean, I knew to do that. I grew up in a household that did that. But before I'm thinking, okay, we're going to have money for ourselves, or what are we, groceries, and we got to do our apartment, right? And Chris said, no, we start with this. You start with this, and you work down. And, again, it goes with the relationship, because if you don't have a relationship, you're not going to be thinking that way.
Yeah. And you might think, you can see how this would logically play out. I've got 100% of my income, and suddenly off the top, and nothing I can see tangibly in return, it's gone. I've lost 10% of my income just like that.
Yep.
but it really, as you give, it's an act of trust as well. Lord, I'm trusting that you are going to provide all these things. And there was an elderly gentleman in the first church I pastored. He was our church treasurer. And he told me, we were talking about tithing, and he said, someone told me long ago, and I believe this pastor, that I can live far better on 90% with the Lord than 100% without him. And I thought, Amen.
Yeah, perfect.
Honor the Lord first. Okay. And you know, and that's an expression of our love and our spiritual thing. And this really goes back to what the greater story, we were talking about this being the story within the story, where, you know, there's people that are wanting to follow Jesus, and Jesus is saying, no, wait a minute, you better really think about what you're getting into here. Okay. Because they had one idea, and they were sort of missing the point of that he came to die to be our Savior and so forth. Okay. Let's go on to the next way, and that is calculate your normal expenses. Why is that important, and how does that work, and how maybe even how you would do that?
I think one reason it's important. I mean, first of all, you literally do that. You go back to your checkbook or your debit card or whatever you're using for your day-to-day expenses, and you start adding up what you spend. And sometimes you're spending more in certain areas than you think you are. You may be spending more for eating out or entertainment or whatever else. Or maybe it's something very practical. Maybe you had a lot of car expenses related to a certain month. I think there's lots of times if we don't sit and write it down, we fail to calculate it at all. You know, we'll think of the, you know, power and gas and all those kind of things. But the routine expenses that we all have, sometimes we don't plan for those at all. Especially we don't plan for emergency events and when the car breaks down and when we need to go to the doctor and whatever else. If we don't plan for that, it's gonna end up in failure.
Yeah. And that's the key word right there. You said plan. I mean, it's as opposed to, and some people do have this in the budget, and I'm not knocking any of those who do this, but it's that key word that you have planned, that you have purposely put this in your budget. You know, you got the person, let's say, who buys 2 Starbucks coffees a day, right? If that's not planned, if you do that per day, 7 days a week, or even 6 days a week, and then you look at the month, that's a lot of money. And then you times that by 12, that's a lot of money per year just on a cup of coffee. But if that's your thing, and then if it's in a budget, then okay. But if that's not planned, and you're like, okay, man, I wonder why I'm coming up short, why I can't pay for my rental expenses, or I can't pay for this. And the only reason I say that is because I used to work for ministry locally, and we would have people come in and say, hey, can you help me out with such and such? And in order for us to be able to help them with finances or whatever else, we would have to go over their budget and look at, how much they took in and whatever else. And then I'm looking, and it's just like, okay, well, I look at the individual, I'm like, okay, I know you got 3 kids in diapers, but I also notice over here that you just spent $400 this past month on cartons of cigarettes. Now, I'm not going to tell you that you can and cannot smoke, but $400 should have been going towards your necessities rather than your wants. And I honestly, that's where it comes in. And it's all about planning and being purposeful and so forth.
I like this comment from Patsy. Thank you, Adam. It's necessary to set your priorities, because when you see what you're spending and when you know what you're spending, you see where your priorities are. You really do. And it might be just as simple as this: get a shoe box, and throw every receipt in the box. Just every receipt. Whether it's for a bag of chips at the convenience store or a meal out, or the kids need shoes, or whatever it is, just throw it in the box. At the end of the month, just there it is. Calculate up, and it helps you see that. Lisa, what do you want to add to the discussion?
I was just thinking back before there was unlimited data on our phones. We had 3 teenagers living in the house. Boy, that was rude awakening. Wow. You're going along, everything is going great. You're paying your bills. And I was like, wow, what? They had all, that was back before unlimited, and you couldn't really calculate it because you're like, well, who's going over? I love it when you can look on there and see who's using. I mean, Chris and I are this, and they were this. So we, anyway, sorry, calculating those expenses.
Yeah. which kind of leads into too. Joe is already alluding to this. The next one about plan for the unexpected. Make sure that this is what I got. Honor the Lord first, Matthew 6:33. Make sure we've honored the Lord and trust Him for those priorities. Then, what's the normal stuff? That's carved out, and you have to plan for the unexpected because the unexpected will happen, and you can't budget for every eventuality. You just can't. And all of us have experienced this. Okay, that washing machine that should last 10 years blew up after 2. It blew up 1 month after the warranty ran out, or we've been there and done that, and you just gotta be ready for it. And that buffer, this planning for a buffer is a great, what's the word I'm looking for? Comfort.
Peace of mind.
You're ready for it. And also, maybe this is also something, when we were young, unfortunately, my wife is a great planner and very disciplined in keeping records. And so a lot of our money management, I lean on her because that's her forte. I'm not too good with numbers. And so it's better to let someone else do that. But it's like, sometimes like you have a yearly expense, like paying your property taxes. That comes due yearly. You can divide it into, first half, second half, whatever. But you need to be setting aside something out of your normal pay because that's going to come at that particular point in the year. So planning for the unexpected. Add anything you want to on this point of these 5 wisdom ideas, wisdom concepts to use in money management. You want to say anything about the unexpected before we go on to work your plan? If not, we'll turn the page.
I was gonna say, I think you covered that.
Okay, turn the page. Just go. Work your plan. What one of us haven't had a plan and all ready to go, and then it just never gets done.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's my weakness. I can do all the above. I can honor the Lord. I can do my tithe. I can calculate the expenses. But when it comes to actually working the plan, something goes wrong all the time. And I think it starts with me. Because the plan takes sacrifice. It takes work then. And I want to shortcut the work because I really want what I want. And so I got to work the plan. That would be my downfall.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I honestly think I can come up with a really good budget. I can even I can subcategories. Here's this. Now, I think I'm fairly decent, but there's other times where it's either I'm just lazy and I don't care, or again, I think everything has to be purposeful and intentional. But even being purposeful and intentional, you constantly got to remind yourself. And I've used this example all throughout this evening. But let's say if you're like a big ticket purchase item or whatever else, or I'll give you a perfect example. When I was little, the only type of money that I used to get was basically for birthdays or holidays. Occasionally I got, money for chores. So I had to save up. Nintendo games back then, I think still today, were like $60-some. So for a kid in elementary school, that's a lot of money to be walking in the store, because once I spend that money, who knows what I'm going to be able to. So I've got to really think like, okay, do I want to get this one game and I can play it for a really long time with a bunch of my friends, or do I want to purchase multiple things throughout the year with that $60? And so I had to be intentional, but I was the dork who would put my money out so I could physically see it and be like, all right, that money. I would put a picture ripped out of the catalog and put like a picture of the Nintendo game around my money and be like, okay, that's what I want. Don't touch it, because that's what I'm going to get here in a couple months. But I had to constantly remind myself, because if not, then if I just have money on me, be like, oh, let me buy this, whatever else. So, yeah.
Wow. That's a really good example, Adam. I appreciate that. We all do that, don't we? We have to establish what our priorities are. And I think there's a lot of people that never even get that far. They never sit down just to think where their priorities are.
Mm-hmm.
And I like people who can do that. The work in the plan is hard because it requires day-to-day discipline. And I'll be the first to say discipline is not always my strong suit. And so I really have to work hard, if I'm going to do that. It helps to have somebody that maybe holds you accountable in some of these areas as well.
Yeah. I just would say this though, maybe throw this in your thinking will help us with working the plan, because if you don't measure and monitor your plan and the outworking of it, it will be measured when the tower doesn't get built.
Mm-hmm.
There will come that moment when it's obvious how
Mm-hmm.
well we have planned or lack thereof or whatever. And so maybe that's just be a motivation. Last one we want to talk about is this one, and it's simply this: work hard and trust the Lord. I mean, God has given us talents, gifts, opportunities. That's the primary way we should be able to pay our bills and to give to the Lord. So it's just, trust the Lord, work hard. I know I told my kids this. Hopefully it was good fatherly advice when they were young adults and getting first jobs. I would simply tell them, here's what you do. You show up on time, have a good attitude, and do more than's asked of you. And I remember telling them, you're going to be ahead of 85% of the people looking for that job.
That is so
and
true.
Just work hard and trust the Lord for it. Here's a good one. I like this from Gail. When I get a car paid for, I keep paying myself that payment. It really works. You get into that savings and very good.
I like that idea.
Yeah. Very, very true. That really does work. Thank you, Gail, for tossing that in. I appreciate that very, very much. So a couple questions. We're not going to discuss it on our online study tonight, but of the above mentioned, which do you struggle with the most? Okay. Is it work hard, work your plan with the unexpected, calculating those normal expenses, or honoring the Lord first? And that's just something that we all should ask ourselves, because where we struggle is where we need to focus our attention. Okay. And then lastly, this question, or next to last, what drives you to succeed? And so
sorry, I jumped to the very last, but yeah.
Again, this is just the diagnostic question. What's driving you? Is it to honor the Lord and serve Him, or is it getting everything I can get? And remember the guy that had the myth of, I am what I own. I'll tear down the barns and build bigger. And we've already looked at that one. And again, do you think most people put more energy into managing your money or their spiritual life? And this takes us back to where we started. Remember, counting the cost about this tower was just a story to say how serious you all are about your followership of the Lord Jesus. And which maybe some of us could answer this question. I don't put much energy into either. Well, maybe that's a place you need to work and work on that. Okay, just a final statement here, because we're just about out of time. But work. If you don't have a financial plan, work on it to make your finances better. If you already have a financial plan, then look back and make sure you're following it well. And there's online resources. I know Dave Ramsey, last time I looked, had a free budget calculator. At least if you say, I don't even know where to begin with the budget, it's free. Obviously, this is a business and they make money, and that's okay. But just to get you started, you can find other online resources as well that'll help you along. Or, maybe a mentor would be of help. Somebody that has done it well. You see that they've done it well and they love the Lord. They have that. Hey, let me just pick your brain. How do you manage your money? How do you plan? How do you prioritize? And might be good suggestions. And any plan only gets off the ground if you start it, and you need to push it through.
Amen.
So, money myth, I don't need a plan. You definitely do. Count the cost. You don't want to be the guy that has the half-built tower that everybody can see and identify as that's wrong. And we start from this position of honoring the Lord first, that we count the cost to know what we're getting into. Any final words from anybody around the horn?
I would just say, speaking of Lord, to kind of capsize or to put all this together, I was thinking your resources are retired to your relationship, meaning your resources, your time, your finances, your money, everything is tied to your relationship with Christ, and everything flows out of your relationship with Christ. So, relationship is tied with relationship.
Yeah. I was thinking too, when we were back at the one question where it said, do you put more energy in managing your money or your spiritual life? I was just going to quickly say, I live with a financial advisor. That's what Chris does. And when all of this happened in the pandemic, people were calling him constantly, wanting to know what was happening with their money, what they should do. And I thought, and they'd say to him, why haven't you called me already? Well, Chris was still, but then I thought, when I read this question, how many people would be upset if the pastor called them to check in on their spiritual life? just, you want them to call and talk to you about your money and how you can, how your investment's going. But, what if the pastor called to check in on your spiritual life? It might not, make you feel as comfortable. So.
Yeah. Very good. Well said.
My last thought would be measure what you treasure. And,
I like that.
If money is important to you and your resources important to you, not just because of what they can buy, but what the difference they can make in individual lives, measure it. Be sure you're spending it where it's wise.
Very good. Very good. That's a great last word, Joe. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to continue on. I know we got at least a couple more sessions of Money Myths, so we'll keep that going for a while. And we'll look forward to seeing you at church for worship services. And if you're watching outside of the Charleston area, hope you have a great church that you can fellowship with. You can also join us online at 10 a.m. on Sunday for our online worship service. If you're unable to get out, we'd love to have you. We miss you. We miss you when you're not here. So we hope that we can see as many of you as possible in person. That you don't know what that'd do for us. And frankly, I think it'd be a boost to you. But we understand if that's not where you're at right now and what you can do right now. So the online service is coming your way 10 a.m. on Sunday. Until then, you stay blessed. God bless you. Have a great night.